Hello everyone. This is the latest in a MeCCG strategy series. This one has sparked off. Recently I played a couple of games against in fact I'm going to cancel this out. I played against this challenge deck, Return of the King. In general, I like my decks a bit better than the challenge decks, but in particular, I do not think this one is very strong. It seems to be built around playing Aragorn, getting Return of the King, using Gandalf to get some rings. Where are the special rings? So gold rings, here they are. Two lesser rings and a magic ring of stealth. Playing some allies and playing some factions. In general, I think you can make a good Aragorn deck, and I'll be showing how to do this, but I don't think this is a good one. I don't think Gandalf is a particularly good choice of wizard. I just, in general, don't like Gandalf, but I don't think his abilities synergize well with a Return of the King sort of strategy. I don't think the rings synergize very well with the character mix or the factions, and whoever made this includes the Tower Guard of Minas Tirith, while also having Return of the King, which both go to Minas Tirith. That can be great if you have both of them in your hand, but if you draw the Tower Guard first, then you run the risk of tapping and discarding Minas Tirith and then never being able to play Return of the King. I also don't think that the creature heavy hazard side of it synergizes well with the resource side. So this, in an excess of ridiculousness, is going to be me trying to make a better Return of the King deck. So, now I realize some of this isn't their fault. The cards that I plan on using do have a lot of rares, and the challenge decks are designed to only use 3 rares apiece. So, for instance, they include Narsil, which I believe is a rare, but they don't include Anduril, Flame of the West, probably because they ran up against the card limit. So you're left with going to the risk of a greater item site for a greater item that's only worth 3 and doesn't have that powerful in the way of effects. So we, however, are going to include Anduril, Reforging, and Narsil, which as a combo creates an item that's worth 7 points and gives you +5 prowess and an extra direct influence, and can untap Dunedain. We're also going to include Return of the King, and we are going to include Army of the Dead and the necessary Paths of the Dead to play them. Army of the Dead is a 6-point faction. It is the best in terms of points faction in the game. It also can't easily be taken away from you. And now it does require you to play Paths of the Dead. So I'm just going to do a second thing where I pull up a geography check. Doesn't matter which deck I'm using for this. So, Return of the King has to be played in Minas Tirith and Anorian. Paths of the Dead / Army of the Dead gets played. Paths of the Dead is played in Dunharrow. Army of the Dead, Paths of the Dead will let you move to Vale of Eric, and you play that here. We also will need a greater item site, which is probably going to be either the Stones or Minas Morgul, or maybe the Dead Marshes, to kind of keep it geographically concentrated. And we'll need 2 information sites, one for Andoril itself, one for the necessary reforging. So that's probably going to be Ammon Hen and Stone Circle, although if we draw it earlier when we're up in Rivendell, we might want to go to, say, Dimril Dale, or maybe even the Worthy Hills. There are a few other information sites, but like, for instance, you can play information in the Isle of Uland, but in general, there are safer places than dragon lairs to find out a few facts. Deck builder. We also, of course, need Aragorn himself. And no Aragorn deck is complete without Arwen. Arwen, we want her for several reasons. One, she's a sage, and we are going to need sages to play both Reforging and Andoril. Two, she's dangerous. This deck is going to be highly centralized around Aragorn, and if anything happens to Aragorn, we are in trouble. That means no Return of the King, no Army of the Dead, 9 points gone. Arwen has +7 direct influence against Aragorn. That's not enough for him to follow her, at least not without a bit of help, but it does mean that we're very vulnerable if an opponent plays her and does an influence check against Aragorn. So we want to have Arwen to keep a lock on Aragorn. Another thing that's important to note is that Narsil and Andoril, unlike most weapons, does not need a warrior to use its full effect. So if everything goes right, I'm actually planning on giving the Reforged Andoril to Arwen, not to Aragorn. That gives her a much more survivable prowess of 7 instead of 2. And with 2 extra direct influence, Aragorn can then follow Arwen. Which means that instead of 9 mine being held by general influence, we have 3. And it means that Aragorn, with 3 direct influence, maybe all the way up to 6 with Return of the King, can run around and pick up factions. Now, those factions are probably going to go into the sideboard, because, again, this is something that we're planning on after we pick up this stuff. And we also probably want a weapon for Aragorn to actually use. Now, we don't want him getting corrupted, but we also don't want him getting hurt, since we need him to play things like Army of the Dead. So I'm going to add Glamdring. Because of the necessities of playing Army of the Dead and Return of the King in specific sites, I don't want to include any factions or items that play in the Vale of Eric or in Minas Tirith. This is going to be geographically concentrated around the south, so we want allies that we can play in this area. There is Nenselda the Winguild, but while she's very powerful and is worth 2 points, we can't... She does restrict our movement, and that might be worthwhile anyway. I'm going to put her in the sideboard for now, because I do have forming an idea for for certain environment resources that might synergize well. But because she discards if you move to somewhere that's not an Anfilis Bay of Belfilis, a Belfilis Bay of Belfilis, Anfilis, or Rouse of the Anduin, that's these 4 regions. We can't move her with the main party. She would have to go to someone a small mind character who can be split off and stay in Edelhond. So I think for the main ally, we are going to rely on 3 noble steeds. That can let us move a bit faster. It also, play in areas we're going to. Ideally, we go to like Dunharrow, play a noble steed or 2, and then play Army of the Dead. And if not, there's still plenty of other sites. We want to go to Amenhen at some point for information. We can play noble steeds with that. We can go to Edoras if we have to. We can play our Glamdring in however you pronounce this place. That's in Harondor. It's only a short march to Cand or Horse Plains, so we have lots of options is what I'm going for. And the Noble Steed is quite effective, being able to tap to cancel strikes. So we've got 3, 9, these 3 together are worth 7, 16, 9, 3, 9, 11, 18, 21. So we will need a few more points cards to balance this out. I'm going to head back to this a little bit because I still haven't fully finalized what the party look is going to look like. Let's look at the geography again. So we got a major site that we're not really using here. There are some factions in Gondor. Actually, here, one thing I'm going to do. I'm going to put in 3 smoke rings and 3 long bottom leafs to help access the sideboard. And sideboard wise, again, because this is going to be delayed a bit, I'm going to include some big factions. Southrons and the Varyags of Can. I want the hero versions, not the minion versions. Now these are worth 9 points between them. The main idea is that once we get Return of the King, Aragorn will have a big whopping amount of influence to use, and we can pick up some big factions. However, this means we're heading towards Nazgul territory, so we'll probably want to have someone who can hunt Nazgul, like, say, Peath, in our party. And I'll put Votelli in the pool, too. They're both rangers, so we'll have another ranger in addition to Aragorn, and they both get bonuses at Nazgul hunting. Votelli's a sage, too, so she can help with Narsil Andoril, and Peath is Peath is a little stronger. The one thing is they are men as opposed to Dunedain, or because one thing I was thinking of is we do need sages. There are a lot of elven. I was thinking elves. We want elves for the sages and Dunedain for the some of the factions in Gondor. So I was thinking of maybe using Star of High Hope to boost the Dunedain. If we're doing more elves, Dunedain and men, then maybe Sun might be useful. Sun gives boost to Dunedain, and if Gates of Morning is in play, big ones to Dunedain and lesser ones to men. We will think about that some more. I do want another item or two, and maybe some smaller factions. So let's just look at we want resources, hero, major items. I'm going to take away the dream cards. We're not playing with dream cards. Don't really want Durin's Axe. We're not doing dwarves. Oh, some saplings of the white tree might be good. Yes, I like the thought of sapling of the white tree, because if we put, say, 2 saplings, they're not unique. If we put 2 saplings in, they're low corruption. We can store them, and we store them in Minas Tirith. Right now, playing Return of the King doesn't tap the site, so we can, head back and store them there if we need to. And that opens up. This is, again, going to be a sideboard card, but we put in the white tree. We can play, if it's stored at Minas Tirith, we can then make it a site that we can heal and, hide from assassins in. And it's worth 5 points, so I think that's enough for points. I do sort of want one more weapon, though. What the hell? Let's put Orcrist in the deck. We've got a couple of graders, sites that are in the general area we're operating in. Now, we want some support cards. We'll put in a trio of Friend or Threes. We'll put in 3 Gates of Morning. I think 3 Sun. And we will put in I'm going to take out a Gates of Morning. I'm thinking some stealth cards. We actually don't have that many warriors, and it synergizes well with the Noble Steed. And so let's go back to the areas. We're moving around Gondor, so that opens us up to men. Rohan and Gondor opens up to men. Thing is, like Pukel creatures, weak undead. I think, I think, I think Dark Quarrels for resource short event. Just cancel Orcs, Trolls, or Men, and if Gates of Morning is out, we can have, just have anything. So that is a putative resource side. Now, this is a bit more clunky than some of my usual resource strategies. So I'm going to want a hazard side that's very fast and free-flowing. We always start with Mouth of Sauron. I'm thinking Corruption and Men. Corruption is very, very easy to play. And Men, again, this is designed for hero versus hero. What I'm trying to do here is that we synergize. Because corruption is most effective against items. They play it doesn't stop your opponent from scoring points, but they play the items, you corrupt them, they get messed up. If we're playing, if we that it provides protection against item-based strategies, but it doesn't do much against them running around and picking up factions. The factions don't give corruption points, and a character who doesn't have any items, if they get corrupted, they can usually play more characters to replace them. Men, however, tend to hang out in free domains, borderlands, areas that people play factions. So I think that... but on the other hand, I was thinking of putting... in fact, I'm going to do that now. I'm going to put it in the sideboard now. Forewarned is forearmed. Gives us bonuses. Well, it's a permanent event. It messes up creatures that have multiple attacks. Most commonly, that is Slayer and Assassins. We're going to a lot of places where those can be played against us, so that is something that's useful to have in stock. But then, of course, that would interfere with our Slayers and Assassins if we do that ourselves. So let's do 3 Cave Drakes. Cave Drakes are just good. And I like the Wizard's version. Because we will need 12 creatures overall. I'm not going to include Lure of Power because the persons who are most likely to be doing influence checks on our end are also the most important people to keep uncorrupted. So let's do 3 just for some cycling, and we'll have in we'll put in a few power built by waiting. And 3 rivers, because river is awesome. I think we actually have too many none, because we need at least 12 creatures. We only have 4, and we've got 6 more cards, so I'm going to have to cut something out. Probably power built by waiting. So now we can't stall anymore. We're going to have some creatures. without, we don't have really any boosters, so we want creatures that are easy to play and reasonably strong. So I'm going to include some cave worms. Those hang out in the often play, the mountain areas that you can play them are fairly well traveled. And I'll have 3 lawless men and 2 ambushers. Oh wait, I still need one more because loudmouth only counts as half a creature, either creature or event. We'll include another creature or event. We'll have Yuvatha. For some sideboard power and some, to bring back a creature if we need it. Now, let's think about our sideboard, because that in some ways is more important than it is in most decks. We do have a whole 6 cards in our resource thing dedicated to sideboard. Although smoke rings we might use to pull something out of the discard pile if it gets, like if we drop part of the combo for, say, Army of the Dead and Paths of the Dead. So we could have a few more factions in Gondor. Let's add 1 or 2. Let's have a few more support, like, Heidi resources. You might want to use concealment instead of dark quarrels. I'll think about that later. It's just more flexible, and we do actually have quite a few scouts already. We could have another item or 2. And I want to have some hazard stuff as well. These are hazards that boost our men. And what are some other men hazards? Whoops. Maybe some thieves and abductors. And some Corsairs of Umbar to cover if they're doing a coastal setup. Okay, so we still have 9 more cards we can put in the sideboard. I think we should have some more resources. I'm still trying to think of the right items. Once we get a bit stronger, maybe we should go for the Dragon Lair in the southwest, so we could play a Valiant Sword there. Maybe another Reforging or 2. Whoops. Yeah. stay with the interface. Reforging, we could just use it to, especially like if we can get these out, you can use the wizard to tap, dump stuff in the discard pile, dump weapons or armor in the discard pile, and then just play them with the reforging instead of going to the dragon lair. So we'll put in 3 valiant swords. Valiant swords can be used by non-weapons, non-warriors. And I'll put in, oh yeah, we were going to move, concealment is more flexible. I'm going to put the dark quarrels in the sideboard. Oops. I don't know what my opponent will be playing, but I know that concealment can conceal against those attacks. One more, probably a hazard. We'll put in, in case we're up against a one-ring deck. Okay, with resources and hazards set up, we now have to think about our characters. So, obviously Aragorn and Arwen, we probably want someone to cover against Nazgul if we are going into the darker areas. With Sun out in the play, we want Dunedain and men, mostly. What have I done here? There we go. A hero, and we want Dunedain. Ideally some rangers or scouts, since now there are a lot of Dunedain, but the scouts tend to be pretty weak. So current 9, 12, 15 or 16, so we don't have that many ones to work with. Maybe Faramir as to pair with Votelli, and Boromir to pair with Peath. I'm going to avoid playing Denethor. There is Return of the King can't be played if Denethor is in play, so we could run into some trouble if our opponent has him. Actually, no, I think I will include him in the character thing, just in case we can't. Well, no, he'll be in the pool, but we're not intending to play him. See, I don't want Denethor around. Now, not too many people run Denethor. He's just not great as a character. But he's primarily there so that we can have him in play in case we need to influence away an opponent's Denethor. And he is a sage. Alternatively, since we're not going to go into the Nazgul areas until later in the game, maybe we shouldn't start with the ladies and instead be starting with someone like Denethor, because Denethor would give us another sage. He's a Dunedain, so he synergizes well with the sun. We can discard him at Minas Tirith when we need to. Yeah, so I think putative starting party would be Aragorn, Arwen, Boromir, and Denethor. That gives us a little light on GI, because Arwen can follow Aragorn, but that would only leave us a buffer of 3, but 3 is okay. Oops. just thinking of some other characters to include. Watcher's a sage, but we got sages. These are more for the pool, not for the starting characters, but we'll have Eowyn, Theoden, and Erkenbrand. And that's 10 characters, and I think a reasonable setup. As for our wizard, everything's centered around the south, so we probably want 2 Alatar. Whoops, we want wizard Alatar. And maybe Palando as a backup. The Palando's not a scout, so he couldn't play the concealments. I guess we'll have Gandalf as our backup. Okay, and oh yes, starting minor items. So I'll definitely want to start with a cram, which Aragorn will start with. That lets him untap if he is needed and can help us march a bit farther if we are heading. One thing I'm a little worried about is that we don't have a whole lot of range. The only ranger in the party is Aragorn. He's going to be needed for other stuff. I think I'm going to go back to my earlier idea. We're going to replace that with, we are not going to use the men. We are going to go with elves instead. So we'll keep the 5 of them, but we'll also include in our pool Gildor, the twins. Besides, they're Aragorn's friends in the books, so. And then maybe some on the off chance we get to play them. A little stronger, a little more rangery. The other thing is that it lets us, we can start with an elf stone. What's an elf stone? With an elf stone in play. So now I'm thinking the starting party is Aragorn, Arwen, Denethor, and Elladan, Elrohir, or Gildor. They're all pretty interchangeable. Denethor has 2 DI, so if we give him 2 more with the elf stone, he can have a 4-mind elf follow him. Arwen follows Aragorn, and that gives us 7 general influence for another character if we want to play one. Which means that, to be honest, as much as I like Glorfindel and Círdan, I don't think they fit. Put in Baragond and Hamma as Haldir, low mind characters who are elves or Dunedain, thus fully work with the Star of High Hope. And there, I think we finally have. Actually, no. One other thing I want to do. Their forging idea is dumb. We'll include 1 valiant sword. We'll include 3 fellowships in the sideboard to protect against corruption and And I figure later in the game, our parties will be a bit more set. We'll have the items, we'll have boosted our direct influence. We bring in some more characters. And last but not least, I think then we should include one more, probably a major item. Maybe the Torque of Hues. Torque of Hues is good. In fact, we should put the Torque of Hues in the main deck. We'll just put a Sword of Gondolin in the sideboard. And with that little bit of vacillation away, I think we now have a deck. We'll need to playtest it, of course, and I figure, in general, I don't like this concept. I think that it's far too centralized around a character, single point of failure in Aragorn, and I don't think that, the cards he's got are nice, but I don't think they're so nice that they're better than just, a straightforward play lots of items and factions sort of setup that I generally go for. But I do think this is a decent competitive deck, and I look forward to testing it out. Anyway, hope you enjoyed and found this informative, and next video will probably be a playtest game.